I'm tired. I'm tired of the nonsense. And I'm not saying this as a Bernie Sanders supporter because I would be the first one to criticize high profile Bernie or any Bernie Sanders supporters, actually harassing supporters of other candidates. Hillary Clinton's campaign, their reflex was those Bernie bros. They're harassing us online. There was never real evidence of that. It was more so that Bernie Sanders supporters were avid on social media and they didn't stand for bullshit. So if Hillary Clinton's supporters and pundits and journalists would put out stuff that are wrong, lying, lacking context, unfair, they would respond. I mean, for better or worse, that's what Twitter is. But you keep seeing from the same exact people in establishment corners this ridiculous notion Bernie Sanders supporters almost equated with Donald Trump supporters as harassing people, harassing African Americans on Twitter, harassing trans people on Twitter, to the point where the Bernie campaign, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't, because even if it's nonsense, you can't be seen to be condoning that. So people in Bernie's campaign, including Nina Turner and others, came out saying we don't stand for any harassment, which I agree with if there's actual harassment. But the more times we see this, and it's the same exact playbook, it's people that condemn Bernie Sanders in very weird ways, whether it be African Americans condemning him. We know about Zerlina Maxwell, who is an African American pundit. I think she's with Sirius Radio. She goes on TV and keeps putting out these ridiculous things that are not true about Bernie Sanders. I remember for his first rally in Brooklyn this go around, his first kickoff rally, she said he didn't talk about civil justice or criminal justice reform for like 23 minutes. He spoke about it within 7, I think it was, and it was just like people were just like clearly pointing that out. Then she goes on TV on MSNBC, says Bernie Sanders, there's no like specifics. Elizabeth Warren has all the specifics. This was on the same week that Bernie came out with a criminal justice plan, a labor plan to double union memberships, a climate change plans. I mean, it's just people keep putting this stuff out there. So I always think, and again, I'm a white dude, so I think I'm being honest and I think I'm being respectful, but should African Americans or transgender people or whoever, even Native Americans, should they just be able to say whatever they want and people can't respond on the merits? I'm not talking about attacking them for being black or native or trans. All that stuff is totally ridiculous and totally disgusting. I wouldn't condone that, and nobody does. But if an African American says something that's not true about a candidate you like, you're not allowed to say anything back? I mean, that's basically what the corporate neoliberal establishment's playbook has been. And it's essentially propaganda to make it seem like Bernie Sanders supporters are basically, racist or homophobic or anything other. And we could disagree on policy, and you could be an older person who thinks, oh, these young people, they just don't understand how the world works. Yeah, you want to think that? That's fine. I mean, you're wrong. But we have to agree we have to be able to respond to political people putting out credible responses. So this Angelica Ross, who I believe, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, owns a tech company that helps transgender people, which I think is great, or a tech company that kind of caters to transgender people. She put out something questioning Bernie Sanders' absence at an LGBTQ event because Bernie cited scheduling conflicts via a spokesperson. To tell you the truth, I agree. I think Bernie Sanders should have been there. I don't question his support for LGBTQ matters, but I think, you have scheduling conflicts, but you just got to make the right decision on what the priorities are, and I think he should have been there. Just like I think, she's an actress and she's trans. Thank you, Jen. See, I'm not totally in the know with the culture. Thank you, Jen. She's an actress and she's trans. So she's questioning Bernie Sanders' commitment. I don't know if Angela Ross, I'm not attacking her, but obviously she hasn't looked at the record that well. So if you're watching, Angela, here's some of the record.
The gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized. And the gentleman from Vermont is
Well,
recognized.
the gentleman from California, is he still here or did he disappear?
For what purpose does the gentleman from Vermont
I
rise?
rise to speak in support of the amendment.
The gentleman from Vermont.
I wonder if I could question the gentleman from California. I am rising in support of the amendment.
The chair is in charge. The chair is speaking. The gentleman from Vermont has been recognized for a period of 5 minutes, and you may now proceed.
I thank the chairman very much and would like the opportunity if the gentleman from California would respond, just to ask him a brief question, if I might. Now, my ears may have been playing a trick on me, but I thought I heard the gentleman a moment ago say something, quote unquote, about homos in the military. Was I right in hearing that expression?
Absolutely. Putting homosexuals in the military.
You said something about homos in the military. Was the gentleman referring to the many thousands and thousands of gay people who have put their lives on the line in countless wars defending this country? Was that the group of people that the gentleman was referring to?
I'm talking about the military. People in the military do not support.
That's not what we were talking about. You used the word homos in the military. You have insulted thousands of men and women who have put their lives on the line.
I'm talking about you and liberals like you that keep the foreign defense.
Gentlemen,
reclaiming my time.
Talk about a lack of commitment to LGBTQ issues. Not to mention, as Burlington's mayor in the 1980s, he was one of the first, other than San Francisco, to have LGBTQ parades for Pride. So I don't, again, she might just not know any of this. She's an actress, and that's fine. She's not a political person or a journalist, so I'm sure they don't know these things. But to make these comments, like, because she's transgender, should no one be able to respond to her? Is that what we're saying? So this article from Out says Angelica Ross leaves Twitter after abuse by Trump Sanders supporters. So again, it's trying to equate Bernie Sanders supporters, and by extension Bernie Sanders, with Donald Trump. And they've been doing this for a while. So I just read to you what prompted this. She said Bernie should have been at this LGBTQ event. So Ross called Sanders' absence from the forum a huge misstep. I was disappointed not to see all the candidates here. I was further disappointed to hear this was not the only LGBTQ event Bernie was making other commitments for. You don't show up for both of the LGBTQ events. That's obviously telling us all we need to know. The comments brought some backlash from Bernie's supporters. So this is the backlash that this article put out. This is the, quote, harassment. This from somebody. So you're insinuating Bernie does not care about the LGBT community? If so, then you're using your platform to spread misinformation about a man who has always been on the side of LGBTQ community. You don't have to like him, but don't play loose with the truth. I don't know. I'm not a bigwig at Twitter. I don't see the harassment in that tweet. I just don't. Do you? Another one. To question Bernie Sanders' stance on LGBTQ rights is the most ridiculous thing ever, and shows you're biased against him. He's been an ally before it was cool and socially acceptable, while every other candidate just hopped on the equality train. Warren was a Republican not too long ago. I don't think the Warren was Republican thing is really relevant, but the point is, I mean, this is not harassment. This is a transgender person making an uninformed statement and getting called to task for it. Too bad. I mean, the third one they point out, and honestly, if there was harassment, it shouldn't have been difficult to find and put it in your story, but the examples the Out magazine used are not harassment. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling any Democratic candidate homophobic. I just don't like Angelica Ross assumed Bernie to be homophobic by charging him with this minor offense. By her definition, a lot of candidates are transphobic, including the one she praises. So, I'm not particularly, this is not an isolated incident, so I'm not just it's not about Angelica Ross, because this is a pattern. The corporate Democratic establishment and these identity politics people, they either don't know Bernie's record or they don't care. And I remember when I covered Hillary Clinton the night of the New York primary in 2016. Honestly, I don't mean this in an offensive way. I just have to be honest. I could not believe how many gay people were at Hillary Clinton's rally. I mean, obviously gay people care about many issues, just like black people don't only care about black issues, and Latinos don't only care about Latino issues. But this is someone who came to support gay marriage like 5 minutes before it became law, right? So it's the same thing here. Like, this transgender people or gay people don't need to support Bernie. You could be a transgender person who's more establishment. You could be a gay person that's, just for whatever reason doesn't support Medicare for all. That's fine. But to put out that you're being harassed because you're putting out statements that simply are not true, I don't know if it's intentional propaganda, but it's propaganda. Like, there was no harassment in that story. But it takes on a life of its own. So first, the headline is, actress leaves Twitter because she's harassed by Bernie Sanders supporters. Then all of a sudden, CNN picks it up because it's something against Bernie. And it's a narrative that keeps getting formed. And then Bernie Sanders campaign, who has nothing to do with it, and frankly, in my view, should just come out and say, we haven't seen any comments that are harassing coming from our supporters, but if there are supporters you could point out doing it, we 100% disavow that. Easy peasy. But this is a continued smear campaign on top. It's one smear campaign on top of another smear campaign. It all builds on each other to basically knock this guy out because they can't go after him legitimately on the policies, because all of the policies are very popular. So all I'm saying is, I'm just tired of hearing from, I don't care if it's a black person, I don't care if it's a transgender person, a brown person, whatever. If you want to put out, I would have been totally fine if Angelica Ross put out, we appreciate Bernie Sanders' strong record on LGBTQ issues over his years in service. With that said, we're disappointed he did not find a way to make these events. I think that's fine. If they would have acknowledged the record is strong over 30 years in government and just said, we're disappointed that he couldn't come. I think he didn't come. I think the scheduling conflict was a climate event, if I'm correct. Whatever. Campaigns make issues. If I were him, I would have tried to come or do a video or something. But when people are putting out falsehoods after falsehoods, you're not really any different than Neera Tanden from the Center of Phony American Progress, right? You're not very different than, David Brock. So I think it's problematic, and I think people need to start calling it out and stop being so afraid to be labeled, stop being so afraid to be labeled racist or sexist. No, they don't get a free pass if they're putting out falsehoods. To me, everybody should be bashed. White, black, brown, Latino, indigenous, glow in the dark. If you're putting out stuff that's not true, you should be bashed. And by the way, I would say the same exact thing. If people were signing offline or leaving Twitter because Elizabeth Warren supporters were harassing them, if I read the same exact tweets in a story from Elizabeth Warren supporters that they put in from Bernie Sanders supporters, I'd be like, I think these Warren supporters should be supporting Bernie, but these are harmless tweets that are not harassing at all. Oh, what would I do without Jen? She keeps feeding me the facts because I keep getting them wrong. Sorry. He was at a historically black college. I thought he was at a climate event, but he was at a historically black college. So, damned if you do, damned if you don't. If he goes to the LGBTQ thing, then he's not showing up for the black community. If he goes to the black community, then he's not showing up for the LGBT community. Thanks, Jen, for correcting me. Hope you enjoyed that last video. Hop on over to statuscoup.com where you can sign up for our email list and become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. Membership is how we grow. That's statuscoup.com/join. And remember, join our email list so we can grow the revolution with you.